Hello, I'm Matti, and this is Grief Liberation, Conversations in Community. Thank you so much for being here. Today's guest is Addie. Hello, Addie.
Hey, everybody.
What are your pronouns?
I use they, them pronouns.
Great, thank you so much. And as a reminder, I use they, them pronouns. So, Addie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, hey, everybody out there. I am a nearly 50-year-old person, unbelievably to myself, living in West Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, in the United States. And we are actually on Lenape land here. I am a parent of a teenager who is homeschooled. I've been married to my spouse for quite a while. We've been together for 21 years. And I am also overloaded with pets. We've got 5 snakes, a lizard, a dog, 3 cats. It's a full house over here. And I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. I think before we truly begin, we should probably start with the physiological sigh. Technique I like to use to kind of settle into this space, both for listeners and for guests. And just as a quick reminder, the technique is we take a full, quick breath, then an extra sip of air, hold for 4 seconds, and then slowly exhale for about 8 counts or so. And are you ready?
I'm ready. I
All
am.
right. How do you feel?
That was actually very lovely. I really needed that.
Good. I'm glad that helped. So, shall we get started?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, awesome. So, first question I ask everybody who comes on, what is your definition of liberation?
So I thought about this a lot this morning, and I think, we all know the dictionary definition of liberation, but for me, it goes beyond that to where I'm not just on paper liberated, but I'm also giving myself permission to be a liberated person. And what I mean by that is you know, we have supposed freedoms in this country right now, and many people just don't exercise them. I am a huge proponent of doing things my way, doing things against the grain, and doing things because I feel that they are right as opposed to comfortable for me or other people. I think that I deeply believe that young people, especially, need to have liberation modeled for them. So, my kid, as I mentioned, is homeschooled. And part of our homeschooling is allowing her to lead her own education and be interested in the things she's interested in and do deep dives on them, and letting go of strict structures and allowing her to spend as much time as she wants doing her artwork, allow her to spend as much time as she wants reading graphic novels and interacting with her friends. And I think that acting on my own liberation scares other people sometimes, and sometimes makes them jealous. I've had a lot of experiences where I've done something my way and people have expressed to me that it wasn't fair because other people stuck to the rules. And by rules, they just mean social mores. Like,
Yeah.
they don't mean, something written in stone. They mean, well, everybody has a wedding in a venue with a reception and a band, and they invite all their relatives, whether they talk to them or not, instead of getting married in Clark Park in the dark using a Quaker wedding license and having our dog as the ring bearer.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I think, liberation is a practice. And I really try to live my life in a way that isn't harmful to other folks, but is also like, I mean, sometimes it ends up being harmful to me, but I need to take those chances and find out for myself sometimes and push the boundaries. Otherwise, I can't feel like myself. So that was a long winded definition, but there you go.
No, I think that was great. I think you said a lot of great things in there, particularly about like being a parent and modeling liberation. Liberation is an action word. Like, I think all of that is very true and something that a lot of people in the world could stand to have more of a reference point on, like following people or associating with people who want to be liberated without knowing that they want to be liberated.
Yeah.
In the trans community, we say, like, when did your egg crack? I think it's kind of the same kind of thing where, like, did you know that liberation was a real thing and not something that, in our society and in our country, we learn and grow from propaganda and stepping away from propaganda and seeing it as propaganda. I mean, that's part of liberation too, but seeing more people being more authentic to
Yeah.
themselves and authentic in how they view the world. In my opinion, that's where neurodivergence is gold.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
I think in retrospect, I was surrounded by some pretty neurodivergent people in my youth. And I apparently was one myself and did not know it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I think, you just said, how do you, or how or when do you realize that liberation is possible? And I think for me, in a big way, I'm sure in smaller ways, it happened when I was much younger, but in a big way, it happened when I was in seventh grade and I met my best friend, Faye, who was just an inveterate weirdo artist, like just the most magical being that I'd ever come across. And she was so unapologetically herself at all times. And her family was so unapologetically themselves. Her dad was an artist. Her mom was like a kick-ass nurse. Her brother and sister were both artists as well. And like going over their house was just this really bizarre sort of otherworldly experience. Like one time her dad was doing something for the clothing company Danskin. And, they have that like dancer figure that's kind of their logo. And like he made a larger than life size one of those dancers and it was just dangling in the basement. So it was just, there was always something weird happening over there that was different than at my house. And it really gave me a different perspective on how people can live their lives. You know, my family was very, I don't want to say strict, but they were very straight laced and weird in their own ways, but weird in kind of conventional ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it was really eye opening for me to go to this house that was really bohemian and watch really strange art movies and sit in a papasan chair and be left home alone to our own devices and all the weird stuff we got up to. So yeah, I think it goes back pretty far for me.
That just kind of brings back so many nostalgic memories about, like, especially the Papazon chair. Like,
Yeah.
that's fun.
Right. It's such a signifier.
Yeah. Like, I never wore gel sandals or anything like that, but I definitely had the choker.
Yes.
Yeah. I just watched the movie Girls Love Girls, and that was so nostalgic. Yeah, I think it's set in like 2006, but there's enough 90s stuff in there too, like the incessant AOL instant messenger
Yeah.
chat, which my screen name for the longest time was Britney Speakers because I was obsessed with Britney Spears.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Mine was just Addie Plum, like down the line. I find something and I stick with it. I have a pair of earrings that I like to wear. I wear them for 10 years straight. I have a screen name. I stick
Hmm.
with it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I've always been a bit of a go against the grain type of person. And I think it does
Mhm.
scare people sometimes and it makes people mad. And like,
Sure.
that's their loss, in my opinion. Like, if they would like to stay small, they can
Mhm.
stay small. But like, let me do my thing.
There is this idea of the cosmic mirror, and it's when people have certain responses to other people, it's because they see themselves and they're afraid,
Mm,
in essence. And so I view myself and a lot of my other neurodivergent friends as cosmic mirrors to society because it's harder to see us as quote unquote normal or mainstream, whatever the heck that means. But we certainly think different. And society seems to think that that makes us wrong and that we should
yeah,
conform. But I think it's so funny that neurodivergence is the thing that's pathologized, not neurotypical behavior, because neurotypical people represent conformity. And how is that like healthy?
right. It's so soul crushing. Like,
Yeah.
why do people want it so bad? I mean, like, I can understand. So, from in the context where normal is good and neurodivergent is bad, like, I can understand, and I have said at times, wow, it would be nice if I was just a normal person. But I don't really mean that. What I mean is, it would be nice if I could be anesthetized and not realize all these things are happening
Yeah.
that should make me mad, right? So like, if I could just get rid of my injustice trigger for one day,
Mm,
the release
mhm.
and peace I would feel.
Well, I think that speaks to neurodivergent grief in general because, like, this idea that we have to be the ones that conform instead of us being resourced
Right.
and seen as problematic, like, we're not problematic. We just have a different way of processing things and seeing the world. We can still do things and get things done. It's just not in the same way that people would like because it's harder to make money off of people who don't conform.
Right.
You can make more money off of people who conform and follow the rules and see things in a linear way, which is considered neurotypical. And to think and feel your whole life that you are not only unseen, but you just feel like an alien in your own body and in the world. Like it's harder to connect with people when you're raised around people who are neurodivergent themselves but don't know it and they are just uber conformists.
Yep.
It makes things really hard and it makes like making friends hard. It makes so many things difficult. So there's even grief within that, the neurodivergent experience.
Absolutely. But skin is exactly the right word for it. I'm
Yeah.
very frequently lately, I've been thinking things like, wow, like, am I the only one who sees this? Like, what is going on? Like, how can this be possible that I'm the only person that sees this thing that's happening? And what's wrong with me? And why can't I not see that and just live a peaceful life? But no,
Yeah.
I have to point out everything. And I think the
Yeah.
grief in that is that we could be so well utilized as problem solvers. And it's such a shame to see all of that amazing critical nonlinear thinking going to waste in the name of just, you know, pushing things along and keeping things smooth and not having to change or make corrections. Just, like, people want to have one idea and they want to go with it and make it work. And they don't want any kind of feedback or problem solving. They want their first thing to work the way they imagined it the first time. And I think it like hurts their feelings or something if there's problems within it that need to be solved. Even if that would lead to a better outcome,
Right.
they would rather that they put out something problematic, not having had input from somebody who they also think is problematic.
Well, diversity seems to be a bad word these days, at least with our government, not in practice. But having a diverse group of people working on the same problem ensures that there is a more creative and inclusive solution to whatever the problem is. And I think that's what's really missing from our society. Like, we do need more connection and community, and our hyper individualistic society makes us feel more alone and separate and like we are the problem.
Yeah.
And then that gets capitalized on. We have a whole medical system that pathologizes things that are real and natural responses to oppression and
Mm-hmm.
not being resourced and all these other things. But our responses aren't the problem. The
Right.
problem is like society
Yeah.
and all these hierarchical systems that are just trying to assert control. And the more depressed and anxious and stressed a person is, the more compliant they're going to be.
Yeah.
And that's where neurodivergent people can often disrupt that, because that doesn't work for my brain. And
Mm.
it doesn't work for a lot of the brains that I know that are neurodivergent. And we
No.
have great pattern recognition.
Yeah. I think it makes me even more eager, and I get like a dog with a bone, right? Like being super depressed doesn't make me incapacitated as much as it hyper capacitated. I get super depressed and I'm like, what the hell? Like, why is this happening to me? And it must be happening to so many other people. So now I'm going to like put all my weird manic energy into contacting everyone I know and networking and like finding a way to work on this problem, which I think is maybe a weird response. But that's the one I have.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's weird at all. I think everybody has a different brain, and if we're constantly trying to measure who we are by comparing ourselves to other people, it just makes us more stressed. Like, even with medicine, like I have something called MCAS, and so I'm going to have a wild reaction to some things that no one should have a wild reaction to.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean that I'm a problem or anything like that. It's just my body is different. It responds to things differently. And I know I already think differently, but that makes me interesting, maybe not a problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, I think it's funny, like how we met is kind of like there was a kind of a weird person where we were working. And that person was like, these two people are also weird and they need to know each other.
Yeah.
And then it just went from there. But like, I think that that is an
Yeah.
interesting commentary on how we were in that place and how everybody else was compared to us.
Yeah. For sure. So, with all of that being said, I'm curious, like, is there an intersection with your definition of liberation and grief?
I mean, I think my grief is that to me, it feels so easy, or not easy, but to me, it feels so natural to go against the grain, strive for liberation. And my grief is in the fact that it is so hard to help other people see what is possible, and that you can be this sort of, and I've had this experience where I'm sort of held up as like this magical creature who just does what they want and is who they are. And I'm held up as this like special being that other people can admire, but they can't aspire to be. And that
Mhm,
is very
mhm.
sad to me, that people can't be with their own brains enough to actually experience. the life that they want to experience as opposed to the life that's being forced on them by society.
Yeah. Oof, I feel that. Yeah. The life that has been predetermined
Yeah.
by society, parents, or family in general, and even to an extent, like friends.
Yep.
I feel that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a recent experience where I got together with someone who I've been friends with since 1999. And over the last like 5 years or so, we've gotten more and more distant, and I haven't really understood why, to the point where when I moved back from Vermont, we never even got together until last week. And it's been 10 months. And reflecting on that visit that we had, I think what I realized was while we were both pretty weird people who got along as, weirdos, we still had very different ways of being. And my way of being is very loud and very bold and very, I'm a Leo type of situation. And the way that she is very passive. And while
Mm.
we have a lot of the same tastes, I think she finds me abrasive in a way that she can't tolerate any longer because I'm always outspoken and she's never outspoken. So it's just, intractable. That's grief as well, having put so much time into a
Mhm.
relationship with a friend and then realizing like, yeah, it doesn't actually work anymore.
Yeah, that's a hard realization, and friendships as an adult are particularly difficult, and it's hard to make new friendships too. And then add on being disabled and neurodivergent, like
Yep.
there's so many barriers. I've experienced what you talked about many times, and it took a long time for me to be able to decipher between friendships that made me feel good and friendships where I was just putting on my people pleasing hat.
Hmm.
And I realized at some point, like, oh, I've just been fawning forever when it came to these people because I like them so much and I wanted to be a part of their group. And I thought that we thought the same way about each other. And I had them more on a pedestal. And therefore, there was not a balance in that relationship.
Yeah.
I was the one that was constantly showing up, and people weren't showing up for me. And taking that into consideration and like some of the healing and growth that I've experienced, I'm now like really sensitive to my nervous system and how it's responding to people.
Hmm.
So if I notice I'm drained after a hangout or something like that, that I might need to rethink the distance that I have with this friendship.
Yes.
And it doesn't make them a bad person or me a bad person. It's really just about trying to keep authenticity and people who are more authentic and a little more self-aware.
Yes.
I like to keep them closer than people who are running away from themselves and or hiding from themselves or
Yes.
trying not to be themselves around other people because they're afraid to or they have a lot of unresolved things. And that's fine. Like any kind of person can exist and is valid in their existence doesn't mean that we're going to be good friends.
Yes. That's exactly it. Yeah. I mean, this person is lovely and has done lovely things for me and has a family that I love very dearly. But yeah, like, if I'm not getting out the kind of trust and vulnerability that I'm putting in, then it's not for me anymore.
Yeah. So, what has community, chosen family, other family, what is your relationship with people you surround yourself with and your own grief?
So I think at this point in my life, the people that I'm allowing closer are the people who I can say anything to. People who I have said, "Hey, I'm checking myself into the psychiatric hospital. I need you to check on my family." Those are the people that I need at this time. There are lots of wonderful people in my life who are not at that level, and that's okay. Our friendships don't have to be at that level for us to still be friends.
Mhm.
But I'm keeping certain people very close, and for the most part, those people at this point are queer or trans or both, or, in some other way othered. And it's because I just feel like I have to explain less. Like we're just existing in the same sort of realm. We have to say less things to get our point across about what's going on with us and to be understood. And I think a lot of grief that I experience on a regular basis is that I have spent too long giving a crap about what other people outside of that circle of folks thinks, and that I took so long to kind of prune it down to the folks that I really want in my inner circle. And that unfortunately includes a lot of my family members. As I said, I was raised very Christian and not super strict, but very repressed. And while I had glimmers of my queerness, in retrospect throughout my childhood, it was never something that occurred to me to pursue. I had an aunt who was a lesbian, or she is. She's still existing, that aunt. I have an aunt who's a lesbian. And when I was a kid, she literally lived with a woman and her children and slept in the same bed with that woman. And no one ever acknowledged the fact that they were gay. Like,
Mm.
it was just this open secret. And one day I remember I was riding on the train and I was thinking about something that made me just go, oh, like when I was I'm probably almost 20 was when I finally realized. So, you know, while she was not ostracized from the family, no one in my household ever spoke of it. I don't know. And I'm pretty sure that like her sisters spoke about it with her, but her brother is my dad, and he and my mom clearly were not comfortable with us knowing that information. And they kept it from us and just hoped that we would never notice, I guess. So there's a lot of grief around the fact that I wasn't really able to know myself when I was young, and that it took me so long to realize who I was, what my identity was. And I think, I certainly didn't really even come out to myself until I was after 40. I'm about to be 50 now. So it hasn't really been that long. And I feel very lucky that my spouse was able to agree to us going into like a polyamorous format, or at least a ethically non-monogamous format, so that I could explore that side of myself.
Yeah.
But it would have been so much grief if I wasn't allowed to explore my queerness. But yeah, that's not something that I talk about with my family. They're all aware of the situation. The situation. They're all aware. They're all well aware of the fact that I'm queer and that I've dated other people who were female presenting or were assigned female at birth. And I just think they just prefer not to talk about it. That's their MO. They just prefer not to talk about it.
Yeah.
They're not going to fight with me. They're not going to ostracize me, but they also don't want to hear about it. And that's a heavy burden to bear, knowing that your family doesn't want you to tell them about your life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really isolating.
Yeah.
And my family was very similar. And I think, at least with my family, the not talking about queerness or the secretly gay people in my family, or even the outwardly queer and gay people, not talking about it, they think is acceptance. That's their version of acceptance, because they didn't shun us and they didn't kick us out of the family.
Right.
So therefore, we're still a part of the family. So therefore, this is their version of acceptance. But that is not acceptance. I'm barely in connection with people who do not want me to show up fully. So that's not acceptance.
Yeah. It's barely.
That's control.
Yeah.
That's control from their side, not mine, you know?
That's true. I hadn't thought about it as control. Like they're controlling the narrative of the family
Yeah.
by not acknowledging me. And I can't imagine I can't imagine anybody who knows both me and my parents, like ever saying anything to my parents about me being queer and my parents having a good reaction to that. I feel like they would just like shut down and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Ugh.
With all of that being said, like the experience of coming out later in life, I kind of came out later, but that's a whole other thing. I came out as trans later. But there's a difference between like knowing and asserting your identity and who you are from a young age and growing into it.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what coming out later in life, what that experience has been like for you.
It's been pretty confusing,
Yeah.
or maybe not confusing. It's been pretty intimidating. I feel very much like I don't want to take up space that other people who've been living their lives out loud for, much longer are already in. So I almost feel like I'm not qualified in a way.
I know what you mean.
And I feel like I have to always be like explaining my marriage to people and how I can still be queer and be married to the person that I'm married to. But also, like, both of us identify as non binary. So, I mean, like, that's kind of queer to begin with.
Yeah, it's a queer relationship.
Yeah. But, I feel a lot of grief about the fact that, like, we just look like a man and a woman walking down the street. Like, neither of us is androgynous in any way. And I feel like I might look a little queer, like if I was by myself, but I'm not sure that if I'm out with them, anybody would make that assumption. So it's a lot, and I feel like I've missed a lot, and I feel like there's a lot of grief about the fact that I don't know, like I don't necessarily know all the history as well as I wish I did. Like, I didn't
Mm.
grow up deep in queer history in the way that some younger folks have, or some older folks.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of in like a weird middle ground. And I very often just feel completely invalid. As weird as it sounds, like this is what happens in my head. I think, oh, I just want to be extra weird. I'm gonna tell everybody that I'm queer so I can be even weirder than I already was, which makes no sense saying it out loud at all. But that's completely what's happening in my head a lot of the time. I feel like I need to prove to people, like I have to give people my cred, like, well, I did date this one person for 10 months. And so that, I'm qualified.
I can imagine like growing up and having to hide parts of oneself and not being able to show up fully, how as an adult it would kind of present as self-invalidation
Mhm.
and not feeling enough or worthy. I've certainly experienced that. And I think it's important to say that there are as many ways to be queer or disabled or like any other kind of identifier. There are as many ways to be queer as there are queer people on Earth. There is not a cookie cutter way to exist and be queer. There's not a certain way to be non-binary. I am non-binary and I'm mask presenting, and there have been times where people thought that I was cis. Being non-binary doesn't mean that you need to be androgynous. It just means that you got to be authentically you. And I understand that line of like, hey, I am also queer. I belong here.
Yeah.
But just by showing up, I think it should be implied. But that's a struggle that I've had as well. Like, especially in Vermont, where the queer community is so spread out.
Yeah.
And I'm disabled, so a lot of the things I can only go to events in Burlington when I am able, when I have capacity, when my body isn't flared up, and that kind of sucks
Yeah.
to.
Speaking of that, I think it just popped into my head that like you would think in Philly it would be easier somehow.
Mhm.
But there's the added component for me of being 50, where like, you know, even if I was out in the scene, like everybody would be so young, like way too young for me.
Mhm.
Because the people who are 50, even if they are queer, are usually home with their kids.
Right.
So, really, it's hard to break in to community in some ways, just because, if I do show up to events, the other people who are showing up are so much younger. I did have that problem in Vermont as well. I was
Yeah.
up there. So, like the Dyke nights that they had was like, oh my God, like I could absolutely be your mother. So it's a little disconcerting when you're out trying to like cruise.
Right. Yeah. I have certainly felt the age difference at certain events. And even before I moved to Vermont, like I've been to online support groups, in-person support groups in places that I've lived. A lot of the support groups that I've been to have not been geared towards people who are 40 or older. A lot of it is like, okay, this is an inclusive space. Anybody can show up. And the things that, you know, 18 or 21-year-old are going to talk about in their experience is going to be much different from mine because I am in a different stage. And a
Yep.
lot of the grievances that a 18 or 21-year-old is going to have, you know, with their parents or with just learning to be an adult. I've learned to be an adult in my own way, and so I can't relate to that. I can empathize and even support, but I'm not benefiting from that. And not to say that I have to benefit from everything and
Right.
every exchange, but I do need to get something out of it. And when I am the oldest one there, or if I feel just othered, I still need supportive spaces.
Exactly. And, the pool is small already. And then it just gets smaller as you get older. So, yeah, there is definitely a lot of grief about having missed out on the young dating years when I could have been,
Yeah.
out on the town, hanging out in queer spaces.
I think a lot of queer spaces have always been intimidating to me as well, especially as an autistic and ADHD person. They have often been overstimulating or loud, or there's a lot of flashing lights, or like there's always some kind of sensory element to it for me.
Oh, yeah.
But, and then also accessibility in getting there or how far it is. But when I was younger, I felt intimidated by so many queer spaces because I felt like I wasn't doing it right. I wasn't being the right kind of queer that would be accepted, and I didn't know how to be queer because I didn't have queer friends growing up
Right.
in Texas. Surprise, surprise.
Oh my God, I forgot you grew up in Texas. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so I just didn't have people to look up to. And then I met my friends Sean and John when I was 18, I think. And I just felt like, oh, this is how you're supposed to do this.
Yeah.
I had no idea. They were the first people that I met that were like truly authentically themselves, them and my best friend, Jackie. And they were the first three people that I was like, whoa, like, I don't have to be queer in a specific way. I just need to find people who are weird like me,
Yeah.
and people will love me. I don't have to seek out all these different types of queer people to be legitimately queer.
Yep.
And yeah, I loved performing, but I was so afraid of taking up space, which is kind of funny. But I know that's seasoned by growing up in Texas,
Hmm.
and the school that I went to, although it was a public school, like they had a prayer circle every morning
Oh my
in
God.
the courtyard. And when I stopped going to church, I got made fun of. Like,
Right.
it was not a religious school, and yet I had that experience, which is wild. So I didn't have any kind of baseline for knowing what queerness is. I knew of Ellen DeGeneres,
Yeah.
uh,
Same.
but I didn't watch her because Texas.
Yeah.
But I did watch Xena and Buffy, and so that was the most queer representation that I had, although, Xena and Gabrielle weren't exactly queer, but they were totally queer.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, like, processing so many things as an adult that I experienced as a kid, even body size. Like, I remember believing all these ideas of body sizes being what was attractive and what wasn't. I
Hmm.
totally bought into that because that's also a Southernism that I won't go into. But even watching Buffy, ooh, I can't remember her name. Was it Tara? That was
I don't know. I never really watched Buffy. I have to confess.
okay. Well, all that to say, Allison Hannigan's character, which I can't remember her character's name, her and her girlfriend, I think Tara, I remember thinking, like, wow, Tara is a larger actress, and like that was bad, and like that was the things that I heard at school and I heard from other people. And I saw a picture of her recently and I was like, she is so tiny.
God.
This idea of, like, you need to be sickly in order to be attractive
Right.
is disturbing.
Yeah.
And I totally bought into that.
It's so insidious. It's so insidious. It's not your failing. That's for sure.
Well, it's not just a societal thing and a media thing. It was like honoring your body was a religious thing. You had to be skinny for God.
Oh.
Like, because your body is a temple
Oh my
and
God.
you have to do all these things a specific way. And my family is extremely fat phobic, and they think disability is a bad word, and like they can be extremely difficult to converse with, I will say.
Got it.
And they still have a lot of that thinking. We can't eat certain things because it's unhealthy, and also not everything we eat has to be for health.
Right.
Like, some things are truly just meant to be enjoyed, and moderation is fine. Like, who cares? And nobody should be telling you or me or anyone else what to put in our bodies. And there's this newer eating disorder that I can't remember the name of. It's like orthorexia nervosa or something like that, where it's healthy eating as an addiction kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely a thing.
Yeah, and that was so prominent in the 90s and the early 2000s, like the hip hugger jeans and like all the bellies being exposed, and that was part of the thing. Like, you have to be able to look a certain way to quote unquote pull that off, and that was the only way to be accepted in certain circles, especially in my experience of the South. And I was a size 0 for a long time,
Oh my God.
which, yeah, I mean, I also dealt with ARFID,
Oh, okay.
undiagnosed for a long time, but I dealt with ARFID, still do to an extent, but I'm better. I eat more things. But I would only want to eat chicken nuggets and fries as a kid.
Mm.
I didn't want to eat anything else. I had so many sensory issues and that kind of thing. But anyway, all of that to say, there is grief in not only self acceptance, but like wanting to feel acceptance from family and peers and just feel like you fit in.
Yeah.
And when you don't, the internal monologue kind of gets distorted and it's really hard to sort through. Do I belong in this space? And challenging all those thoughts when it's like either I don't belong in this space, or even if it's I shouldn't eat this, if I hear my brain say I shouldn't eat this, I now challenge it. Why did that thought come across my mind?
Right.
I'm allowed to have treats. I'm an adult. Nobody is ultimately going to care. Sure, people will judge me for what I'm eating or whatever, but it's none of their business.
Right. I really like that approach, actually, that like questioning the thought, like why did that thought just happen? That's not really something I've
Mhm.
ever done, but I like it. Feel like I'm gonna apply it.
Well, that's the hardest thing. I mean, the first thing in anything, whether it's like anxiety or depression, which I have experienced my entire life, is to get curious about what these thoughts are. So some of the more obsessive thoughts that I had as a undiagnosed autistic person, I didn't know that like kind of OCD like symptoms could happen alongside autism,
Mhm.
but they can. And so I would obsess over my thoughts and ruminate. And it was like a huge eye opener when I was like, oh, I can choose to listen to that, or I can choose to be curious, or just laugh at them.
Yeah.
I have now been able to personify that voice in my head, and I know whose voice that is. It is not my voice. It is a person that I know, that voice, who is always saying mean things.
Mhm.
And so I tend to be like, would I trust this person if they said this to me in person? No. Why am I listening to them when they're stuck in my head?
Yep. Oh my gosh. I'm like having so many thoughts about body positivity right now. It
Mm,
just brought up
mhm,
so much. And like it ties into the queerness realization,
yep,
actually, because part of my body positivity awakening was that before I moved to Vermont, I had been in this group of kind of like a collective of folks who were doing body positive figure drawing. And we all took turns
mhm,
being the models, the nude models. And most of those people were queer and trans. And
mm.
I think that was sort of like a behind the scenes sort of nudge, like I was on my way to finding my people and my identity at that time, but I wasn't quite there yet. So yeah, that's actually like something that's been important for me as far as queerness goes, is that I feel like body acceptance is so much more prevalent. People are more joyful about their bodies. And that's something that's really important to me. I don't, I didn't grow up with like people saying a lot of really mean things about my body, but like I definitely grew up with people saying mean things about their own bodies and putting themselves down. And, it gets under your skin, and advertising gets under your skin, and not being able to find the cool jeans in your size gets under your skin. And being able to sort of let that go has been part of my queer awakening, actually.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it's like this idea of self acceptance allows other people to accept themselves too.
Yes.
Like, I think that goes back to what we were saying in the beginning, where like you want to find community, you want to find people that accept you and all of that, and you want to feel like you're queer enough and all of that. But when you feel comfortable and authentic, I think people are drawn to you more. And it's like you, by being authentic and loving to yourself and challenging things like my body is fighting against me versus this is how my body is loving me today,
Mhm.
and it might look different day to day. But that gives other people who are experiencing the same thing internally permission to exist of themselves more than you realize. And that's the collective you, not just you. Like the more authentic and the more we accept ourselves and truly love ourselves and validate ourselves, the more we're going to find connection, deeper connection with other individuals, and the more permission we give other people to be exactly that for themselves.
Yeah, I think, when I first started working in the hospital in Vermont, like in person, and I was
Mhm.
really going on a deep dive into this like Butch Miss Frizzle sort of look, I felt amazing. Like I really loved how I looked. And I had so many people come up to me and compliment me, which had never ever happened to me before. Like I've literally never before that had anybody come up and say they like my outfit or my hair or my earrings or whatever. And I had so many strangers come up to me and say nice things about, how they liked to see me in the halls, and it always made their day to see what I was wearing. That was like super healing, actually.
Yeah.
And I'm not even dressing like that anymore, but it's just such a moment that really brought that point home to me, right? Like if I'm accepting myself, I'm drawing other people towards me and I'm encouraging other people to maybe express themselves, which is a really great feeling.
So when my best friend died, I did DBT therapy right after, and that was like the most helpful thing for me because it taught me tools and ways of challenging my thoughts, the patterns that I had, and it helped me to regulate for the first time. And regulation is not the goal, processing is the goal. But I never learned to regulate. And that was like such a transformational period because I realized that I was in my grief, in my depression, I was not allowing connection. That's all I wanted. And I wasn't able to connect with other people the way that I wanted to. I isolated. And so, like, one of the things in DBT therapy is to act opposite. So, if you're feeling like isolating, you reach out to people. And if you're, feeling all kinds of different ways, acting opposite is the way to help. Like, even with shame, the way to get through shame is to talk about what you feel shameful about. And that's really hard and that's really vulnerable, but that's where the connection lies. That's like the good stuff. And so, in dealing with that grief and learning DBT skills, like now when I feel myself starting to shut down or wanting to isolate, I'm like, damn it, who do I have to call now? Like, I don't even want to, but I know that's what my body, my mind need. And I always feel just a little bit better every time
Yeah.
because vulnerability is the key to connection.
Yeah.
And without it, then, it's not really a deep friendship or connection. And those are allowed too. You don't have to have every relationship to be a super deep relationship. I mean, I wish that were true, but it's not. I tend to be a little bit deeper than some of my friends and acquaintances, and that's okay. That's one of the reasons why I have the podcast, so I can talk about deep shit.
Yeah. It's all right.
Yeah. But it's also a good tool not only for connection, but like it gives me a boost and there are things I can do with that boost.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think what you said about vulnerability and friendship is really key. Like I don't have to even be physically near a person, but if I can text them the vulnerable shit that's going through my head, that's everything. That, pulls me out of whatever I'm in to be able to check in with another person and know that I'm actually being heard.
And having non-judgmental people in your corner who are going to show up consistently, that in itself is healing. And having people who can sit with harder emotions, like that shows their capacity. There's a lot of people who are really uncomfortable with grief in particular, but with shame or fear and anger and a lot of other feelings that we have. And it doesn't mean they're bad people for not wanting to be around it. It just means they're not comfortable with that. And that's something that they need to process or not. That's fine. But when you surround yourself with people that you can count on who are not afraid of talking about the hard stuff, that's when you truly feel seen. That in itself is healing.
Yeah. Oh, you got that right. Man,
So we've talked about a lot of stuff.
we did talk about a lot of stuff. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's a lot going on.
Yeah. And there's a lot more that we could talk about, but I think I'd like to shift things to joy. What kind of joy are you experiencing these days?
I am finding a lot of joy in rediscovering Philly. I moved to Vermont in 2020, January 1st, 2020, and everything went sideways. And then I got kind of trapped there for about 6 years. And coming back to Philly was really scary and a really hard decision to make. But the level of joy that I experience on a daily basis from like the simplest things now, it's unreal. Like, I didn't really realize how much I missed Philly while I was gone. And
Mm.
what I'm finding is that there's just these glimmers of beauty. So Philly, if you haven't been here, I mean, Maddie, you obviously have, but like for folks who haven't, like we legitimately are a gritty city. There are broken down vehicles, empty houses, lots full of junk, potholes everywhere. And yet, amongst all of that stuff, there are little pockets of beauty to be found. There's street art everywhere,
Mhm.
intentional and unintentional. Like sometimes some wires look really pretty in the sunlight in the afternoon and leave a cool shadow. And so what I'm finding joy in is doing photography again and capturing all of those things that I really missed while I was gone. I think the thing I've been saying to everybody is Vermont is overall beautiful. Like it's just kind of like a homogenous beauty. But the challenge of Philadelphia is that it is not homogenous in any way. And you have to actually look to find the beauty. It doesn't smack you in the face when you're
Mhm.
driving to work in the morning. You have to notice the magical moments that happen on the trolley in the morning. You have
Mhm.
to look around and not look at your phone when you're walking down the street and notice all of the art that is just everywhere, all of the textures and shapes and
Mosaics.
the mosaics, the murals, formal and informal. There's just so much here to see and notice. And that makes my ADHD brain very happy. And it also makes my artistic brain very happy to kind of pull those things out of the grime.
Mm.
And then I'm also just finding joy in building community again. I did feel very isolated when I was in Vermont, and being able to have friends who are just a couple blocks away, like I can walk to their house, is incredible. And just the variety of people that I have access to, and also just my neighbors. I'm actually like joining forces with the block captain, and we're planning a block party. So like today I was hanging out before this call on the block captain's porch, and it was like her, this other lady Angel, this other lady D, and then another neighbor named Carmen came up, and like it's just, they've all been really accepting of me on their block. Most of them have been here
Mhm.
a really long time, and feeling like I can contribute and be a good neighbor and be welcomed in the community in a way I was very much not welcomed when I was in Milton, Vermont. It's been wonderful. I love observing the life on my street. the level of joy that's just in everyday conversation happening outside my door is,
Mhm.
and in the midst of this like kind of rundown neighborhood that I live in, is
Mm.
just a really good reminder that we can be having a really shitty time and we can still find some joy in what's going on.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, Philly is so beautiful in its own way.
Yeah.
Very different from Vermont, just like you said. But there are so many hidden gems, whether it's like food or art or nature. Like the Wissahickon
Oh my
is
God.
quite beautiful.
Yeah.
But there are so many pockets, and some of them are harder to find than others.
Yeah.
But yeah, Philly is a great place.
It's got so much history and it's got so much heart, and it's kind of a magical conglomeration of people. And I just really love being a part of it.
Oh, I'm glad you're back there and you're feeling more at home.
Thanks.
Sad to see you go, but totally understand.
It was just not my home.
Yeah, and that's okay.
It all worked out.
I got one last question
Okay.
for you. What do you want listeners to take away from our conversation today?
I really hope, going back to the beginning of this whole episode, that people can take away that liberation is an active word. I think we have to practice it and model it if we want to see it happen. We can't oppress ourselves if we want to see changes. So I hope that people can take to heart that there's this weirdo in Philadelphia who is just like living their life out loud and and doing things totally off the books and off the rails. And I hope you can take a little inspiration from the fact that it is possible. It can be really hard, but I think ultimately living a life that you believe in and is meaningful to you is just so important. And I hope that somebody is inspired. That's all.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for being here today and for talking with me. I appreciate you, Addie.
It's been really wonderful chatting with you. I feel like we had some very introspective talks when we were working together, and that was really nice part of my day. So this is kind of
Mhm.
like harkening back to those like lunchtime strolls where we were getting deep. So this has been really nice,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you too. And yeah, I look forward to our next conversation.
Right.
Well, thank you, listeners, for being here too and for tuning in. If you would like, share, subscribe, and rate the show, I'd appreciate it. And until next time, remember to be kind to yourself. Bye for now.